Right, well, good afternoon. I'm joined today by Andrew Daniels from Chorley Council. Andrew, now I know you're involved with social media quite prominently here at Chorley. Can you tell me what sort of forms of social media communication you use?
Yeah, at Chorley we use quite a mix of different social media, social networking sites. I think it's important to get the mix right. There's no point in trying to do everything and not being able to do it properly. So we've sort of used some of the more common ones, I suppose. We use Facebook, Twitter, and Flickr as some of the main sites. But I think the important thing is as well, there's lots of discussion forums that go on and blogs elsewhere that aren't part of an official site. So one of the key things for us is going to where the conversations are. It's not all about just using the main sites. We've got local discussion forums for Buckshaw Village, which is part of Chorley and Adlington. So as part of it, we try and make sure we're listening to all the conversations that are happening online, and where appropriate joining and put comments on the sites.
What do you think the major possibilities and objectives of social media are then? What can it do that maybe some of the traditional forms of the media may struggle to do?
I think some of the sort of key benefits, I suppose, of social media and social networking sites, one of them obviously is immediacy. Things can happen straight away. If something happened this morning and we want to get a message out in the weekly press, we'd be waiting another week before it went to press, but we can actually get messages out straight away to people who use the social networking sites. And it can be quite localised as well. There might be a particular issue, like I say, in Buckshaw Village, and we can address that on their community forum straight away. So immediacy is one. The other one, I think, is reaching an audience that maybe doesn't read the local press. Sort of circulation figures are in decline in the local press, whereas the number of people using social networking sites is sort of rising exponentially. So there is the possibility of reaching audiences that we can't, whether it's through people coming to us or people reading the press. These are people who are out there but aren't currently engaged with the council, and we've got to try and go out there and make sure they know what we're doing. And if they've got something they want to tell us, that they can contact us, in an arena that's comfortable for them.
And can you give us any examples of when recently you've used social media here at Chorley?
I think one of the best examples we've got is probably during the snow and ice earlier this year. I'm sure you'll all remember skidding to work or not being able to get in at all at the time. But it's a really important tool for us because the snow and ice had an effect on some of our services, in particular for us, the bin collections. So we were able to keep people updated as to what was happening, whether their bin would be collected today or whether it would be delayed by a day. And we were able to post pictures of where collections were taking place and things. So again, like I say, through the local press and the weekly newspapers, it was a week before we could update people. But by using, not just using the social media, we obviously used like the radio, which is quite immediate as well. But by updating people regularly on what was happening, they were able to find out what was happening, and and if they knew a neighbour who maybe didn't use the sites, they could tell them. So it was a way of getting out a message that otherwise we would have struggled to do.
Now, you've mentioned about the communications use of social media. Do any councillors use Twitter or blogs?
The councillors at Chorley, very few of them actually use some of the social media sites. There's probably a couple of reasons for that. One, a lot of the councillors are a bit older. It's not of their generation. A lot of them are retired, so they're not overly familiar with sort of using computers generally. So the idea of sort of the social networking sites, he's very unfamiliar with them, and I don't think they feel comfortable in using those tools. So that's maybe one reason. And the other, I think there's sort of among not just at Chorley, but generally when I've spoken to other people, there's a bit of a fear of if councillors are online, it makes it easier for people to maybe criticise them or target them. So there is a bit of a fear factor as well. But if done properly, I think it can be, be really good. There is one of our councillors who uses, he has his own blog, he uses Twitter, and he does it to update people more or less on a daily basis about what he's doing. So if you're one of his constituents, you know exactly what he's doing for you, whether it's he's reporting, a fault in the road, or there's somebody who's got an issue with a planning application, he's telling people what he's doing. So when it comes down to the next election, people will think, well, hang on a minute, I don't know what the other two candidates have been doing, but I know he's been doing this for me over the last year, and it can be a real vote winner for people.
So that's some of the positives. Are there any major challenges for the use of social media for a council?
There are a lot of challenges. It has been really positive for us in Chorley, but it's not to say along the way we've had to overcome some challenges. The first one, I think, is about using it properly. it can be very easy to sort of jump on the bandwagon and, you know, sign up for a Facebook group or start an account on Twitter. But if you don't use it properly, it becomes pointless. People will see that you're not using it, or you're trying to maybe just feed people press releases, and that's not what people are on there to read. So if you don't use it properly, you can't build up trust, and then people won't bother with listening to what you're saying or engage with you. So one of the key challenges is to make sure you use it properly. Another of the challenges is sort of you sometimes get sort of single issue groups set up, or single issue websites, and that can be a problem because it becomes into a sort of a slagging match with a council, which is what you don't want to get into. We had an example with sort of Facebook groups that have been set up and unhappy with maybe a decision we've made. We had one where there was a local pub that was closed down for breaching its licence, and that set up a campaign to sort of get the pub reopened. There was a lot of information that was put out on the site that wasn't actually true, so it was a challenge for us. How do we get involved in it? Do we sort of leave it and not say anything? Do we get involved into putting things on there and responding to everything? Then you get into a bit of a he said, she said argument, which doesn't look good for anyone. So in the end, what we decided to do was to sort of, if there's ever that we come across a group that's you know, very vehemently against something we've done, or a single issue group, we'll try and put the facts on there. So if somebody, you know, a general member of the public comes onto the group, reads all the posts that are on there, they can see what the people who are against what the council's have said, but they can also see what from the council's side of things, and hopefully then they'll be able to make a balanced decision themselves. So that's another challenge. One sort of final challenge is about the time to use social media as well. It can be quite time consuming to fit it into what we're already doing in our workload. You know, it's something else that's come along in the last 3 years. We've tried to fit it in, and it's not always easy to balance that against other things we're doing. We've still got a lot of the traditional media that we need to make sure we're using properly, you know, sort of the newspapers, and that's important for the councillors. Like I said, not a lot of them are using social media sites, so they don't always see the value in those, but they'll see the value in having some good coverage in the local press. So it's about getting that balance right between spending time doing the traditional media and sort of the new social media as well.
And just finally, do you see use of social media extending amongst council communications teams in the future?
I think social media is definitely here to stay, and I'm sure there'll be more and more sites that come online in the next months and years. So I think it's gonna happen. What tends to happen, I think, is that you'll get progressive councils who use things well and do things well. You'll see results and good things happen. So them councils who are maybe a bit wary of using it or don't know what to do, will see what other councils have been able to do, and then maybe try and follow their example. There is a real wide spectrum of how councils use it, from some that are, you know, have got people employed specifically to look after social media, through to councils whose IT departments won't let them have access to Facebook and Twitter at all. So there's a really broad spectrum of how people use it, but I think it's here to stay, and I think it's a really useful tool for people to use.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.